Good morning. Hope everyone had a wonderful night last night and everyone grabbed their coats for the reception. It was a little chilly for Phoenix. Again, not as cold as in Boston, but chilly nonetheless. So we're excited to start day 2. I was really thrilled to see many of you had participated in yoga this morning. I envy you all getting up early and going down and taking part of that. I think we had 47 women doing yoga this morning down the hall here. We will be offering a restorative yoga tonight as well at 8 o'clock, so I'll get to the specifics of that later on today, but we'll also have yoga tomorrow morning too. So glad that you're taking some time for yourself. That is what this week is all about. So a couple of other just housekeeping things. One of the things that we are excited that you all have already started to do is sharing with the world what you are learning here this week and sharing it on social media. And we encourage you to continue to do that. Share your photos, share your insights, share the quotes that really resonate for you. And later on this afternoon, we will go through everyone who's posted, and the person who's doing the most activity will receive a bit of a prize that we'll share with all of you this afternoon. So if you haven't started already, you can get started sharing on LinkedIn and Twitter if you use the hashtag #LinkageWill. So you can add and then win a prize later today. Well, I'm thrilled for today. Yesterday, we took you to a place of really deep self-reflection, right? Looking at your inner critic, thinking about the 7 hurdles, looking at your assessment, and spending time in your learning team. So we're kind of all in this place of vulnerability, and I want you to stay there this morning especially, as we shift and start looking at our competency of being clear and linking that with our hurdle around clarity. To do that this morning is our first keynote speaker of the day, which is Christine Whelan. Christine is a clinical professor in the School of Human Ecology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the director of MORE, which is Money, Relationship, and Equality Initiative. She's a nationally recognized speaker, expert in the field of self-improvement. Dr. Whelan has authored 4 books, 2 of which are on best practices for emerging adults. The Big Picture, A Guide to Finding Your Purpose in Life, and this one I love, and Generation WTF, What the Blank to a Wise, Tenacious, and Fearless You. She has been published in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, USA Today, and the New York Times. She took the stage at Linkage's Global Institute for Leadership Development in Singapore last year, and I am honored to welcome her to the stage. Christine Whelan.
Good morning. My name is Christine Whelan, and I am fabulous. I did my undergraduate at Princeton University. I did my graduate work at Oxford, where I got a master's and a PhD. And I did my academic work during the school year, and in the summers, I worked at the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post as a journalist as well. After I got my degrees, I moved back to New York City, where I wrote a dating and relationship column. And then I used my master's research to write my first book, which was called Why Smart Men Marry Smart Women. And along the way, I met a smart man myself. And so there I was on Good Morning America, publicizing my book and flashing a sparkly engagement ring. I was preparing for my wedding at St. Patrick's Cathedral, where I was the 4th generation in my family to marry there. And of course, the wedding announcement was in the New York Times. After I got married, we moved 5 times, and I supported my husband as we moved 5 times for his career. All the while, I wrote 4 more books. I taught at major universities across the country, and we had children. So now I am a busy mom of 3. I teach at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, and I give speeches like this one. I do consulting. I write books. In addition, in addition to that, I volunteer at my kids' school. I went to cooking school, so I host big dinner parties as well. And I am on the finance council of my local parish church. Right? That's me. But this is also me. I felt the pressure to achieve and to be successful from a very young age. My mom had written 27 books and was on tons of TV shows. So the bar of success was set really, really high. I knew what I had to do to be a success, and I worked really hard to do it, all the way through. I knew there were problems in my relationship before we even got married. We were in couples counseling. But there were good times as well. And, well, quite frankly, the train had left the station. The woman who wrote "Why Smart Men Marry Smart Women" does not call off her wedding. After I got married, we moved a lot, and I wrote more books. And because I study self-help, I tried to get really introspective. I decided, you know what, I can do this. I can fix anything, right? If I just work hard, if I try hard enough, if I try the right technique, I can make this work. I know I can do it. In fact, my husband said at the time, and I don't necessarily think he meant this as a compliment, he said, "Christine, it's like you can bend the world to your wishes just with your sheer force of will." I said, "Thank you." Because really, I believed I could. That was my goal. I was going to be in control, and I was going to make it all work. So when we had kids, I wrote a book. I wrote several more books, but these were about values and purpose and meaning formation. So it was a great time for me to reflect on really what I was all about and how I was going to live my life. And I very much recommitted myself at that point to success in my career and to parenting. I was going to do both, and it was going to be great. I was also recommitting myself to a life of perfection. But then I started to get really overwhelmed. I had 3 kids. I had a big, successful career. And my husband had completely checked out. So I found myself getting angry. Like an anger, a rage that I gotta tell you, I had never, ever experienced in my life before. Like I didn't even know was in me. You know that rage where you're talking through your teeth, right? Because you worry that if you actually open your mouth all the way to say something, like the monster is gonna come out and throttle someone, right? That was me, right, that was me. So all of those anxieties were really beginning to come after me. But damn it, like I was the one who wrote books on how to have a good relationship. I was teaching a class at the University of Wisconsin on happiness and well-being to hundreds of undergraduates. I had to make it work. I had to be in charge. I had to be in control. That was about 18 months ago. I was dubbed the happy professor. But I wasn't happy. People often called me Superwoman. But I was using my superpowers, in part, to try to outrun my demons. And they were getting closer and closer each day. Because of these anxieties, perfection was the only way forward, right? The only way to be enough was to be perfect. If I couldn't make my marriage work, was I a fraud? Would I destroy my children's lives? If everybody saw that I wasn't perfect, would they still love me? How is it that I couldn't bend the world to my wishes with my sheer force of will this time? It worked every other time. Did I deserve all of this? Because all that career success, well, that just sort of happened along the way, but I didn't really deserve it. My fears and anxieties had absolutely taken the wheel in my life. They were what was driving me. This is also me. We all have two stories. You have a story of success, of accomplishment, that got you in this room here today. And you also have a story of woundedness, of fears and anxieties. And guess what? That story got you here in this room today, too. Both are you. Both are your stories. And yours may not be publicly visible, that other story, but it's there. Can you tell both stories in your life? Clarity of self is the first step in becoming the leader that you want to be. If you accept my invitation to look at both stories in your life, I promise you are not going to lose all the strengths and all the gifts and all the success that got you here. In fact, my bet is that if you're able to look at both stories and incorporate them into your lives, then you will move up to even higher of an octave of career success, because you're not going to be spending so much time running. Instead, you can put more energy toward living. True authenticity, true clarity of self, really only comes when we look at all those inner conflicts, whether it's conflicts around our self-worth, whether it's that perfectionism, whether it's the desire to please everybody all the time. Maybe it's an anger against authority. Maybe it's your social roles that are kind of boxing you in. But by looking at them, we can start leading in the way that we want to. We can start showing up in our jobs, in our workplace, and in our families the way we want to. Less passive aggressiveness, more collaboration, less micromanaging, and more delegation. Clarity of self is the first stepping stone toward being a purposeful leader. Here's why. Because when you accept your fears, when you look at them, when you see them for what they are, when you tell that other side of your story, you liberate yourself to live in the light of your awesomeness. Because outrunning your demons is exhausting. Because the pressure to be perfect, that's a really heavy burden. And because even if you are really good at suppressing all those fears, all those anxieties, all the inner critic thoughts in your head that are trying to keep you down, let's say you suppress them all. You push them down into a little ball. No one can see them. Here's the problem. They seep out sideways. They seep out sideways. And whether we know it or not, then we become a kind of a marionette, that they're like a kind of marionette puppet thing leading our lives. rather than us being able to know that our choices are really coming from our authentic self. So this idea that it might be seeping out sideways, it is quite possible that this is happening to some of you in your own lives right now. Maybe it's headaches and muscle pain. Maybe it's anxiety. Perhaps you drink a little too much at night just to calm down. Maybe you're heading toward burnout. Or maybe you get that anger, that white-hot rage that you know is totally outsized for whatever's going on, but you just can't help it. There is no reason to keep running. Your gifts are not compensation for your woundedness. Your fabulousness is not icing on a crappy cake. You are good and worthy just as you are. See, the thing is, when I'm asking you to look at this other story of yourself, I'm not doing it to make you feel bad about yourself. No, totally to the contrary. The idea is if we look at this other story, hopefully we can take those big, scary demons. We all have them, right? You can take those big, scary demons, we look at them, maybe we even hug them, understanding that they are part of ourselves. And as we do that, the big, scary demons hopefully shrink down into little shmoos, right? Our little shmoos. Now, I would love to tell you that you can be able to look at your fears and conquer them and overcome them. But it really doesn't work that way. Instead, the idea of looking at that other story of your life is a way of making it a more manageable part of you. You and the shmoos. We all have our shmoos. But the good part about getting them shrunk down as shmoos is that then you can go forward on the journey of life. They'll be in the back seat. They'll be hanging out. They'll sometimes get up and yell and make quite a racket. But your whole authentic self can move forward. You're driving the bus. In your competency sessions later today, you're going to have an opportunity to do this. I created an exercise based on acceptance and commitment therapy. And it's a way to do just this, to look at your anxieties, to look at your fears, to look at the yeah buts that might be holding you back. And by acknowledging them, attempt to pull them together, put them on the bus of life with you, and move forward anyway. Because with clarity of self, we can spend a lot less time running and a lot more time leading on purpose. Okay, wow. So I have given lectures on purpose for like years now. And I have never begun a lecture that way before. And I did it here today because over the last couple years, I have realized that our most beautiful visions of leadership, our most beautiful and heartfelt attempts to be clear in our lives, can be utterly hijacked if we can't tell both stories. Now, it turns out that in my years of research doing this, I actually answered a lot of these questions myself, right? I did a lot of workbook exercises. I believe that if it doesn't work for me, then I can't ask it to work for anybody else. So I do all my exercises myself. But it turns out that it was actually my perfectionism that was answering, not my authentic self. And this might be true for many of you who have done these exercises before. right? We think we're answering the right way. And in fact, we come up with a set of goals or a purpose statement that we really are kind of psyched about, except, I don't know, it just doesn't, nothing really comes of it. Why? Perhaps because we weren't asking these questions in the right way beforehand. Because if it's your fear of failure that's making you answer in a particular way, you're not going to come up with the authentic statement you want to. So, as we go through this idea of purpose, I want to check in on these concepts along the way, okay? So let's talk purpose. So purpose is traditionally defined as a singular life aim, like your objective, your intention, the reason why you get out of bed in the morning. Bill Damon, who is a professor at Stanford and is kind of like the grandfather of purpose research in the United States right now, he defines purpose as a generalized intention to accomplish something that is at the same time meaningful to you and of consequence to the world beyond the self. Or, as I usually like to simplify it, purpose is the why behind everything you do. So taking time to answer and really just having the space to ask questions of purpose is crucial for leadership. But it's often scary, right? Because change is scary. Research shows that change is a really mixed bag for people, especially as we get older. Like in your 20s, you're totally good with change because everybody's going through it. But as we get more set in our ways, the idea of challenging our purpose and asking those questions of why am I here, right? Those get a bit more scary. So thinking about purpose in a serious way, and not at 3 a.m. when you've woken up out of some anxiety dream and you're lying there thinking, what am I doing with my life? Yeah? No, that's not probably the best time to think about your purpose. So asking and answering these questions in the light of day, this is where we can move ahead toward purposeful leadership. So here's how it works. All right. Having a sense of purpose, having a why behind what you do, actually gives you a sense of agency. And agency is a fancy academic word for saying that you kind of have control over your life, or you have a perception of control over your life. You're making choices, and you're feeling good about those choices. And you're feeling good about them because they matter to you, so you've asked that question of why it matters. Together, that tends to lead to life satisfaction, right? Because we're doing what we want, we're moving forward in the direction that we want, towards something that we care about. So people who score higher on purpose and meaning in life inventories tend to be healthier. They tend to have better relationships. They tend to live longer. They even tend to make more money. And purpose is not something that peaks in your 20s and 30s either. So for all of us who are in our 40s and 50s and worry that purpose may not be something in our future, no, actually there's great research by Eric Kim at Harvard University, and he looks at purpose through the life course. And what he's shown here in this graph is that these are groups of about 50 people. And what he's shown is that purpose scores, in fact, increase as we age. So we have plenty of time to ask these questions and to do this thing. Now, purpose matters, right? Okay, fine. But I am probably not the first person to tell you that. Purpose has become a buzzword in corporate America, and that's really good because more and more companies are asking these questions. But if you have ever had to do one of these exercises in a corporate setting, you know that when your boss is looking over your shoulder, those answers are going to come from your perfect side, not from anything else, right? Right, you've got to answer those in a certain way. Your purpose has to be in keeping with the company's mission statement. And actually, new research on vulnerability shows that that's probably a good thing in that setting. So we want to be a little more vulnerable, but we want to use it rather strategically, because there are times to put on the perfect face, the professional face, and then there are times to be more vulnerable. So if you have done some of these exercises before, what I will ask you today is to be willing to kind of go a little bit deeper and to try this in a new way, to bring both of your stories together as you ask and answer these questions of purpose. Good leaders have purpose. Authentic leaders have heartfelt purpose. And that's what we're going to go for. All right, so with that frame, it's now time to ask what I think are the three big questions about how to live and lead on purpose. What matters most to me? Why does it matter? And how can I make it happen? Now, with the frame that I just put on this, wow, those questions became big and scary, right? Like, those are huge. And so your little schmooze, we have to pat them on the head, right? The little anxiety schmooze, they're popping up again. But we will go onward on this. Research shows that bite-sized pieces are much easier to accomplish than the whole big thing. So with each of these questions, we're going to break it down into some bite-sized pieces, put it together, and try to make this whole idea a little bit less daunting. All right, so what matters most to me? We're going to go with that one. All right, what matters most to me? When I ask my students to answer that question, they invariably say, I just want to be happy. Right? And to a great extent, we all want to be happy. The problem is that happiness is this kind of catch-all word, and I don't really know what it means. The other challenge with happiness is that we're really bad at predicting what's going to make us happy. Research by Dan Gilbert and others has shown us that since predicting what will make us happy means predicting the future, we're not very good at that. There are too many variables. And so that means that sometimes we get what we were going for. We get what we want, but we don't want what we get. So happiness is kind of a challenge that way. And interestingly enough, good old Aristotle thought the same thing. So what Aristotle did was he broke down this idea of happiness into two big buckets. The first was hedonic happiness. Hedonic happiness, he said, was stuff that feels good in the moment. A great party, a wonderful meal, great sex. It's about ecstasy. It's about pleasure. And if you're living a life of hedonic happiness, then what you're trying to do is maximize pleasure and minimize pain at every turn. The problem with only going for the hedonic life, as cool as it is in the moment, is that you know how like when you've got all these parties lined up and you're doing all this fabulous stuff, there's the downtime between them where you're just sort of exhausted and maybe you feel a little let down? This is the challenge with going from one hit of pleasure to the next. So he talked about a second kind of happiness, and that is eudaimonic happiness. So eudaimonic happiness is that feeling of a life well lived, that feeling that you have worked hard for something, that you have contributed, and perhaps even that you've sacrificed a bit for something worthwhile. And at the end you say, wow, that's really good. I've accomplished this. I feel very good about this. Or, heading into Thanksgiving next week, another way to think about it is that feeling that when you look out at the holiday table, right? You look out at your family and friends. And yes, you may have had a fight with your uncle about how to cut the turkey. But all in all, we make investments in our family, we make sacrifices for our family, and that those moments when we look out at all of them and we see us all together, you say, wow, I'm really grateful, I'm really blessed. That's eudaimonic happiness. Now, here's the good news. You don't have to choose one or the other. In fact, your eudaimonic happiness is a whole lot better if you sprinkle in a fair amount of hedonic happiness, right? And your hedonic happiness actually becomes that much more pleasurable if there is that bigger why behind it, that reason behind it. So while eudaimonic happiness is the one that is really considered the link with purpose and meaning, we're all going for that perfect fizzy mix of both. So as I tell my students, I wish you all a life of eudaimonic happiness with a lot of hedonic happiness along the way. But life can be tough sometimes, right? So have you ever had that moment where you say, is this real life? Is this actually happening? Because I am so overwhelmed, I can't even think about this question of what matters most to me, because it's all too much. Here's the thing. Yeah, it's real life. It's really happening. And you can't fly away. That's how you know. So when you try to sort of figure out this question of what matters most to me, that's really a question of values, right? This is where values come in. So thinking about it, what do you value? Do you value responsibility, hard work, commitment? Do you value social justice and preserving the environment and unity with nature? Whatever it is that you value, thinking about values is a really important first step toward thinking about purposeful leadership. Now, I will tell you from the outset that coming up with a short list of values is really hard to do. It's hard to do because we have many voices telling us what we should do, what we should value, what we ought to do, right? And so separating out those messages of what other people want us to do and really kind of focusing on what we want to do as individuals is a challenge. So I so deeply thought that my value of commitment meant that I had to stick with anything, that I had to always keep trying harder, that I had to be the primary caregiver while working 2 jobs, that I had to do it all, that all was in my power if only I tried harder. That was how I interpreted that value of commitment in my own life. It was really a should. But the thing is, I do value commitment. I do value the idea of personal responsibility, but not in the same judgy and self-blaming way that I did before. If we aren't clear who's driving the bus, whether it's our fears and anxieties, or whether it's a more incorporated version of ourselves, identifying our values is really, really hard. You can value commitment because you are so terrified that if you don't keep going in a particular direction with a project, everyone will see you're a fraud. Or you can value commitment because if you focus your gifts and strengths in a particular direction, you're much more likely to have the positive impact you want to have. It's the same value all the way through, but a really different emotional valence to it. And to make matters worse, values conflict with each other, right? So you may value family and you value work. You may value spending time with friends, all these things. You have all these, and you can't do everything at once, right? I value my family and spending time with my 3 beautiful children, but I also value translating academic research so that people can use it in their real lives. So how do I choose which is which? And actually, our different values take center stage at different times in our life as well, when we are in different life stages. So all of this means that this idea of picking like some core values that you're going to stick with forever, that's not going to happen. But even some values that you have for right now, that can still be quite challenging. It's when you figure out the why it matters, that next question, the why it matters, that you can better navigate these choices in life. And why it matters is a question of purpose. I think we probably need to give another little quick pat on the head to the schmooze, right? Because, you know, it's getting more scary. All right. So, next I want us to think about the story of success, right? Think about your strengths. Think about all the great things that make you you. Yes, you. Think about what superpowers you have. We all have them, right? And research repeatedly shows that being able to identify them actually has a very positive impact on your personal life and your professional life. But here's the thing. According to national statistics, only about half of us can identify our strengths and our superpowers. So that means that some of you here in this room today are struggling with that very issue. And don't be hard on yourselves. Instead, though, I want you to take some time this week to try to get there. Because research from the VIA Institute of Character shows that folks who know how to identify their strengths actually do better at work. They say they're more likely to flourish at work. They enjoy their jobs more. And actually, they end up doing more of the roles that they want to do because they've identified those strengths. The VIA Institute of Character actually is an outshoot of this VIA character survey that Martin Seligman, who's sort of one of the founders of positive psychology, he came up with. And it's a free, academically validated online survey. So if you are looking for a little refresher course on all of your strengths, that might be a good thing to check out. It's a really helpful tool. Okay. So we've talked about values, and we've talked about strengths. Now let's talk about this idea of what you want to do, who you want to impact. Who do you care about? Maybe it's your team at work. Maybe it's your community. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it is a particular cause that you care about. How do you want to use your gifts and your strengths in keeping with your values to make a positive impact? Now, remember I said that we were going to break things down into small steps, right? Because they make them a whole lot less daunting. Okay. So in competency sessions, you are going to have a chance to do this. You're going to kind of create a Mad Libs purpose statement that looks something like this, right? So you're going to take your values, you're going to take your gifts, and you're going to take your impact groups, and you're going to put it all in one sentence. So when I did mine, it looked something like this. Because I value friendships, commitment, and faith, I will use my gifts for translating research, making connections, and organization to positively impact my children, my students, and the broader public. Yes, this is very public-facing, right? This sounds wonderful. But the thing is, it's actually true. It is actually what I want to do. And because I've been trying to work with both stories, I can now look at all of this in a much more authentic way. So I want you, as you go through this, to ask yourself, are the values and strengths and impact groups that I have chosen, are they defensive strategies to suppress my darker story? Might I write a different purpose statement if I actually embraced those little schmoos and those demons in my life, if I stopped running a little bit? Now, when you do this, you don't have to show it to anybody. We're going to have some sharing sessions, but you don't have to share. This can be a very private exercise for you, because this is where clarity of self comes out in all of your leadership as well. This is a tall order. right? This is a lot to ask. But the thing is, we're not even done yet, right? Because once you ask what matters most to me and why it matters, then you've got to get to the how it happens. And the challenge is that most of the time, we get to that last step of how does it happen. We get there first. We don't ask those questions of what matters to me. We don't ask those questions of why it matters. We go straight to getting it done, right? So we have a to-do list, and we set goals, and we're checking them off, and we're moving forward, and it's awesome, right? But I would imagine that some of you have had that experience where you've worked on a big project, and you get it done, only to have that feeling of letdown at the end, right? Only to be like, yeah, all right, so what's the next thing that I got to do? And I can tell you, I had this experience in my own life. So right after college, I went to get my PhD. And any of you who've done graduate work, you know that the graduate work can be very isolating, right? So I was alone in the library. I was kind of getting pretty antisocial. I was going kind of crazy. And as I was working on my dissertation, had you asked me what my purpose in life was, I would have told you it was to get my PhD. So on the day of my doctoral defense, I pass, I have my PhD, I am Dr. Christine Whelan. I walk back to my room, because I'm going to change and get ready for what's sure to be a fabulous party celebrating all of this. And I look in the mirror, and I burst into tears. Because there I was. It was still just me. I looked the same. I still didn't have a job. I still didn't have a boyfriend. What the hell had I been doing for all that time, right? I had been working toward this thing, and nothing had changed. So I did what most 20-somethings would do when they're in a puddle of tears. I called my mom. And my mom said, "Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I totally meant to tell you that was going to happen." And I was like, "Wait, what?" She said, "Oh, yeah, honey, when I got my PhD, I cried in the shower for 45 minutes. Your father didn't even know what to do with me." And I said, "Mom, I really could have used this like 5 hours ago. Just a little advanced warning." But the thing is, my mom couldn't tell me why we had both cried. And I couldn't either. And it wasn't until I began to study purpose that I realized that getting my PhD wasn't my purpose. It was a stepping stone. It was one of the goals on my path to purpose. But if you don't know why you're headed there, then even when you get it, you might not know what the next step is. You might just feel that letdown. Okay, here's a news flash. You ready? Humans function best when they're doing something they want to do. Okay? Right. If you feel like you should do something, or you ought to do something, sometimes you're going to do it anyway, right? But you're not going to have a lot of joy in it along the way. Other times, you are going to do it, and then you're going to get kind of angry about it, right? So maybe you martyr yourself. Do any of you guys martyr yourselves? Yeah, you know, the whole routine of, fine, I'll do it. I do everything around here, but I'm going to just do it. Or, I've been working on this project for 6 hours. Could you please just help me? Right? Like, we do those things. That's because we're acting out of things that we should do, not values that we really have, not purpose-based commitments that we want. So the problem is that when you do something, not because you want to do it, but because you feel like you should do it, everyone suffers. So instead, I'm hoping that we can move forward to make some purpose-based commitments. right? So instead of just kind of doing the to-do list of shoulds, we can come up with things that we really want to do. So purpose is why it matters, and goals are how to make it happen. Okay? Purpose is why it matters. Goals are how to make it happen. And a purpose statement is really lovely and inspiring, right? But the thing is, until we actually act on it, what does it do? A purpose statement is potential energy. But to move it toward doing something is to take that potential energy and make it kinetic. Now, this step is terrifying to all of us. So the roller coaster analogy is a really good one here. You know, on a roller coaster, when the first part of the ride, you're just like chugging up, up, and up on those rickety tracks, right? And if you're a thrill seeker, you both love this part, but you're also a little bored because like the real stuff hasn't begun yet. If you're terrified of roller coasters, this part is particularly terrifying because you're going up, up, and up, and you are just so worried about what's going to come next, right? Oh, wait, there we go. So we have the first part of that roller coaster ride is potential energy. Potential energy, you might remember from high school physics, right, is stored energy. It's when we're thinking about doing something. It's when we're kind of preparing to do something. It's when we have good ideas, but we haven't put them into action, right? I hate roller coasters. Like, I truly hate roller coasters. And when I was, the last time I went on a roller coaster, I was in my early 20s, and I was with some graduate school friends, and I was trying to act cool. And so we all got on the roller coaster, and I was smiling, thinking, I'm going to die. I got on the roller coaster. I probably had a smile plastered on my face the whole time. And then I got off, and I was like, yeah, that was great, that was great. I took 3 steps off the ride, and my legs gave out from under me. I totally collapsed. Like, seriously, couldn't control it. My legs gave out from under me. I was terrified. Sometimes putting new ideas into action can be kind of scary. It means choosing a path and committing to it, and then working hard to accomplish your goals. But then it triggers all those fears. Will it work? Will I fail? Will everyone see this time that I'm actually a fraud? In a sense, we've always got this mix of potential and kinetic energy in us, right? We're always doing something and preparing to do the next thing. But right now, when you think about your purpose statement, and when you think about purposeful leadership, you've got quite a bit of potential energy building up here. What we want to do is to take it kinetic. But by looking at that other story of ourselves, we can make sure it's really the authentic purpose for you. It's your whole self is coming toward this, so that you won't collapse at the end, so that your legs won't give out from under you when the ride is over. So purpose-based commitments, right, are goals with a purpose, a how with a why. Later, you're going to have an opportunity to do this in competency sessions and to put this to the test yourself. So I want to give you an example of this right now. Let's say one of your values is health. Okay? One of your values is health. Great value. And let's say one of the purpose-based commitments and the goals that you want to set around health is that you're going to go to the gym more often. Okay? Now, I use this as an example mostly because behavior change research always uses going to the gym and dieting as their examples. And it's not because all these behavioral economics folks want us all to be skinny and fit. It's because these are things that we can measure, right? These are changes that we can measure in people's lives, which makes it very helpful for research. So let's go with this gym example, okay? So you value health, and you say that you want to go to the gym more often. All right, let's say you want to go to the gym 3 days a week, right? And there is this fantastic new exercise class that you're going to do. This is going to be you. I totally look like that at the gym, right? Don't you? Okay. So the class is an hour, and then it's going to take about 15 minutes to get there, 15 minutes to get back. You'll need to take probably 30 minutes at least to get yourself ready for the next thing after that. All right, so that's 2 hours, 3 times a week. Total time, 6 hours. Screech. Because here's the mistake that all of us tend to make when we try to go gung-ho toward behavior change. What 6 hours are you going to take out of your week to go to the gym? You're saying, I don't have 6 hours. I'm a very busy person. Yes, you are. I know. And the thing is, we're always doing something with our time, whether or not it's sleeping or whatever we're doing, right? We're always doing something. So how are you going to make one of these purpose-based commitments actually happen? How are you going to put it into action? So the first thing you want to ask is going to the gym the goal you really want to set? Like, is that really what you want? Is that really the value that you want to put into action? Or is it that you worry about that nasty aunt of yours that's going to say, oh, you put on a couple pounds in the last year, huh? Right? So then if it's a should, you're not going to want to do it. But if it's a value, then you might actually say, yeah, I do want to prioritize my schedule. I will come into work a little early. I'll get a little less sleep so I can leave a little early and make that class at the gym. Or you'll say, no, actually, it isn't my value. I want to spend that time having dinner 3 nights a week with my family. Forget the gym. Or you might say, I want to get into work a little earlier to organize my schedule for the day ahead. There are so many different things that you could do to prioritize your values, especially when you're separating them from the shoulds. So we find it much harder to do things that don't actually matter to us. And as this theologian and writer, Frederick Buechner, so beautifully said, purpose is where the heart's deep gladness meets the world's needs. Right? And often we jump to that last part, the idea of meeting the world's needs, which is incredibly important. But knowing where your heart's deep gladness is really crucial toward actually getting any of this done. Now, this is somewhat challenging for people on the best of days. But this is also where most folks would end this talk on a perky note and would say, so, 1, 2, 3, pretty easy. You write your purpose statement, you set some purpose-based commitments, you get your goals done, and presto, happy life. Except that we know that that doesn't always work that way. So maybe you will do these things, and it'll work for a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months, and then it'll just sort of fade out. Or maybe you'll think a lot about all this and actually never take any action. Either way, if you're like me, you will blame yourself, like, my gosh, why can't I stick to the things that I should do? Why am I not prioritizing all this stuff? Why am I failing yet again at this? Instead, I'd like to ask whether, in fact, you really should be blaming yourself, or whether it's more that the schmooze have actually taken control. Whether those fears and anxieties are actually what's stopping you from doing this these exercises in a way that you'll actually stick to. And this is why I framed a really otherwise pretty upbeat talk on purpose and leadership the way I did. Because again, your most beautiful ideas of purpose and personal clarity can be utterly hijacked if you can't tell both stories about your life. With heartfelt purpose statements, heartfelt purpose commitments, and clarity of your personal purpose, the goals you set will come from the real you, the authentic you. And there'll be goals that you actually want to make happen. And ladies, when you actually want to do something, look out, world. Here we come, right? There is an old saying that we teach what we need to learn. Indeed, I am this fish. I had really wanted to end this speech by saying that I had turned all my monsters into schmooze, they were riding along the bus with me, and I was acting in service of love, not fear, and my life was great. Right? Tie it up with a bow. My divorce was finalized this year, and it was awful. But a lot of you have had traumas in your life too, whether it's a divorce, whether it was a loss, other painful experiences. And the feelings that I felt were near universal to some of the experiences you've had. What it did do for me was it brought up all my woundedness, all my demons, all my anxieties, and they were right in front of me. They were blocking my path, and there was no way I could move forward without actually looking at them and engaging with them. So be gentle on yourself as you're going through this work. Because there may come a time when your path is blocked too. And if that happens, remember that we both have both stories. We can both incorporate them into ourselves. And after doing this work myself, my purpose is still my purpose. But even beginning to do it in the service of love, not fear, that changes everything. As you go forward, you might decide that you want to do something totally different than you ever thought you wanted to do before. Or you might recommit to the good work you've been doing. Either way, there is joy ahead when embracing your gifts does not mean outrunning your demons. And when life happens, as it inevitably does, your purpose is going to guide the way and help you get where you need to go. Adapting this beautiful quote from Catherine McKenna. Every time I see a strong woman leader, I want to know, what dark did you conquer in your story? Mountains do not rise without earthquakes. Having clarity as a leader means having clarity of personal purpose. It means being able to embrace both your light and your shadow. It means asking, what matters most? Why does it matter? And how to make it happen? And often it means asking it again as the earthquakes of life shift the ground under you that you thought was solid. I am on a journey of purpose and clarity and wholeness. I hope you'll join me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. Oops. So I did say we were going to start our day with vulnerability, right? So bringing back some of the words that Susan shared with us yesterday, I hope that you enter your day coming from your compassionate center as you really do think about the commitments that you're making to yourself this week. And some of it will be acknowledging what Christine just said, the anxieties and fears that we have, and making sure as we set those goals that we're doing so with both parts of our story, and that we are also recognizing when we're going up and down and being aware of our authentic self in every situation that we're in. So for the rest of today, you will be going through 2 competency sessions. One will be a deeper dive on the inner critic, and the second will be a deeper dive on the purpose work that Christine just shared. If some of you in your app have different locations or you have multiple locations of where you're supposed to be going, please stop by the registration desk to make sure you go to the appropriate room. Enjoy your day, and we'll be back here in the ballroom for lunch, and then later on this afternoon for another keynote speaker. Thank you.